Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about a hot topic that a lot of people have been requesting me to talk about, and that is the difference between a recorded sound and a live performance. If we haven't met before, my name is Percy, and I've been doing live sound for over 16 years now. And I've also done some studio projects, and I've done some studio mixing for about 3-4 years now. But in all this, I've been working for a company that sells musical instruments and sound equipment. So I've been exposed in designing studios, and I've also been exposed in designing live performance systems. So without spending too much time talking about me, let's dive into the issue at hand. A lot of people have been sending me messages saying, you know, we have watched some certain artists perform live, and it sounds totally different from the experience that we have been having while we're listening to the music on CDs or YouTube videos, or the music album that the artist would have produced officially, as compared to then how they sound on the live show. So the question is, why is that? Why is there such a big difference? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'll just skim the surface, because if we go deep into it, we might spend 24 hours talking about it. So what I've noticed in my line of work, number one, is the acoustics part of both setups. Most of the time, a studio room, a studio environment is treated. There's good acoustics for the studio booth. Walls are treated, floors, ceiling, acoustic materials are provided to make the sound in that room sounds good. Now this is different with what happens in live environments or live shows. Most of the time it's depending on the promoter, whatever venue they would have hired, whether they would have hired it because of a cost or because it's big enough for what they want to do. But that's the issue. Most of these venues, they were not designed for live performances or for sound reinforcement systems. Therefore, they don't sound good acoustically. There's a lot of reflections. Some rooms give you bad echoes. So because of those acoustical differences between these two environments, you're going to hear different sound qualities, and the studio is going to sound much cleaner, and the live performance is going to be affected by those acoustics. However, you can do something about it. You can tune the PA, reduce certain frequencies, boost certain frequencies, compensate for the live performance to sound good. And the other advantage with studio, obviously, is they're using studio monitors, for example, the ones that I have here. And these speakers sound great right from the box, and you don't have to do much. So they make music listening to reference speakers. Whereas when you are doing a live event, you have a live reinforcement system. Number two factor has to do with the quality of equipment that gets to be used in these two different environments. I'll give you microphones, for example. When a studio producer or a studio engineer is looking for a microphone, they spend too much time and invest in which microphone that they want to have. They spend lots of money. You know, we have sort of like $5,000 mics. You know, a $1,500 mic is regular. But the bottom line is they spend a lot of money and invest big in their condenser microphone of choice, right? But for a live event, most of the time you are dealing with issues to do with feedback, rejection, the strength of the mic, how does it sound when you do close miking. So it gets to affect. So you get to have the legendary SM58 being majority of a go-to microphone in some professional events or something like that. So those microphones are not going to sound as bright or as good as condenser microphones that are used in the studio. And also, if you carry the studio condenser microphones for the same purpose, to put them on a live stage, to do lead vocal or backing vocals, the microphones are super sensitive and they get to pick up everything, the wind, the noise, everything on stage, the crowd. So it then doesn't become a very good mic for that application. Therefore, the difference between the mics will affect how a studio project is going to sound and how a live show is going to sound. So putting these two together, you can obviously do some EQ to make the live sound better trying to compare to the studio environment. Another third thing that I have seen, because I've also participated in recordings, and I remember one day we took time in recording one song. So the time factor is my third most important thing to look at, because there isn't much time when you're doing a live setup, but there is a lot of time when you're doing a studio project. We did record a song. We took the whole day recording just one song. If stuff wasn't sounding nice, we'll talk to the artist and say, can you put a bit more emotion into it? Do this take didn't sound good. There was a little bit of too much breathing on this one. You coughed a little on this one. You were off time. There was a bit of a discord. So you can cut and retake when you're doing a studio project, right? But you can't do that in a live environment. A live environment is real time. It's real time. Everything is happening at that time, so it's a bit of a challenge. Sometimes there's limited time for setup, and sometimes you don't have enough time to do sound check. So you don't get a lot of things right. You have to work through things while it's happening. Also, I've noticed that after recording in a studio environment, you can do editing of your recording. You can start to mix it again, change a lot of things and make it sound better, right? Or add some vocals on top of it, change guitars. You can do quite a lot in the studio. I think you have heard somebody says we have recorded a song and it takes 3-4 weeks or a month while mixing is happening. Then the song comes out. So in all that time, at least you have an opportunity to polish each and every second of the song. You have time to listen to every instrument, every vocal, and make all those necessary corrections and adjustments. Versus when it's live, it's real time. No editing. It's 1, 2, 3, go. So the band has to be well rehearsed, you see. Then that would greatly help. If the band is good and they know what they're doing, the drummer has tuned the drum and the drum is in tune and is playing well, the guitars are also in tune, the vocals are also singing in the correct key, that would be an additional advantage to get to make your live shows sound much better. I'm losing my count now, but I think number 4 factor has to do with the teamwork. The teamwork within the studio and the teamwork at the live event. There are some projects where there is a live recording engineer, then there's a different mixing engineer, and there's also a different mastering engineer. So in all that, you get a lot of feedback and expertise. If the mixing engineer complains about this, they can probably do a retake. Or if the mastering engineer complains about this, the mixing engineer can change something about it. They have that team coordination, right? Then for live events, the teamwork part is also working under pressure. There is not much time. The engineer has to communicate with maybe the monitoring engineer or the guy who has rigged the PA, communicate with the band, communicate with the artist, and all that is happening right in front of an audience sometimes. If you can't do it during soundcheck, right? But it's now happening right in front of the audience, and you really can't pay full attention to technical teams while the audience is attending the performance. So you have a challenge where the teamwork in a live environment is pretty much doing firefighting, right? I think number 5 has to do with the communication with the band. You say when you are in the studio, it's the producer or the recording engineer sitting comfortably with the band members, and they're talking about things and they're saying, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, let's try this, let's try that. But when it's on a live gig, you don't have the liberty to walk up to an artist and say, you're holding the microphone wrongly, step back a little bit, do this, tell the dancers not to do that, the kind of things. So you have certain limitations in terms of communication. So you probably have to rely on some sign language or something, So an advantage will be if you have worked with a team for a long time, you can quickly communicate and quickly rectify some of the things that will be happening. And it's also important that when you're doing a live show, from a live sound engineer perspective, be able to read the crowd, communicate with the crowd in a way that you look at how they are responding to a performance. If there's a challenge, you can do something about it. I've attended shows where people really turn their backs on the engineer, and I've even attended shows where they throw some things at the engineer, like cans and stuff, because they were not so happy, and the artist had said the engineer was messing up their sound. So that communication part has to be well coordinated. So that can also affect what will be happening, and that will give you a big difference between the studio and the live. I've also noticed that there are some producers who can make their own beat, like the whole instrument, and the artist can come and just do vocals, but they've created the whole instrument, the instrumental of the song. That is your drums, your bass guitars, your electric guitars, your keyboards, the voices, the wind instruments, everything. They've created all that. And the challenge will be for the band that will be doing live to do a rehearsal of that. So if the band is not so good as compared to what the producer has done, you're obviously going to hear some differences. But if the band really puts in some work and do the rehearsal, you're most likely going to get a satisfactory sound. But then, if there are too many instruments on the song and the band is limited, the advice would be get a loop some of the studio tracks that were created that you can't reproduce on the live show because of maybe the instruments and the voices that would have been used. Best thing is you just carry a loop and you play along with the same song. Then the other thing that is very important to note nowadays is the uploading of live materials. It would have been nice that you would have a situation where you do a live recording now, you take some time to do a post-production, also for the video guys to be cutting and editing the videos, and they upload the video later, maybe like a following day or 2 days later or something like that. But in most cases, it might be streamed right when you are mixing and the show is happening, and it's also going to streaming. So you have limited time to edit and correct some of those things. So you see that it might not sound perfect, right? The final thing that I'm going to talk about is the mixing and the mixing processes that happen between the studio and the live environment. Sometimes the guys in the studio have access to powerful softwares, powerful plugins, like Waves and stuff, or even stock plugins within their recording softwares. For example, I use Studio One. Let me check if it's on. Yeah, I use Studio One, so it's got powerful stock plugins, but you can also get some other plugins and or connect there. But then if the live sound engineer doesn't have access to some of the tools that would have been used to create that original sound that people like on the CD, right? And they don't have those tools, they just have a dry mixer without too many effects or that processing, and have no access to those plugins, it's going to sound different, obviously. So the mixing engineers for live, they also need to at least it's easier if you're working with digital mixers, because there's also a lot of processing within digital mixers. So if they get access to digital mixers, they can even use the same plugins that are being used in the studio to make the live show sound equal to the studio. So if you look at these challenges, you discover that time factor constraints and the skills and the abilities of these studio guys, if they are much higher than the guys who are mixing for the live, you're definitely going to get a slightly not so exciting experience, and the differences will be wide. But if these guys have similar skills, right, if they've got similar skills and they can kind of work together in communicating, and if the live sound engineer can interpret what has been done on the studio project, they'll make it sound good. But in my experience, it's not going to be perfect to be in a live experience as compared to listening to a CD project or a studio project. But a lot of work can be done. I hope I have covered some of the differences that will cause you to experience that slight difference that some of my friends have been talking about and sending me questions wanting me to answer about it. I hope I've covered it well. Have a good one. Take care of yourself. Like and share this video if you've enjoyed it. If you hope that somebody will learn from it. Thank you so much for your